Hi guys, what's going on? Welcome to my channel if you're a new follower, and welcome back if you've already been following me for my first two videos. I really appreciate all the love and support I've been getting. I was recently featured in my good friend Fly with Captain Joe's YouTube, and it brought a bunch of you guys to my channel. I figured what we could do in the meantime is get kind of a vlog going for some topics that I get asked frequently. But without further ado, here are the top 10 tips. Number one tip for your flight training, and this can kind of apply also towards like your first career job or your first application. Do your research. I can't tell you the amount of times that I get messages from people just asking, what's the best college that I can go to, or what school do you recommend me, going, or what aircraft should I fly first. Doing your research is really going to be helping you out with these kind of questions, and it's good to have a mentor. It's good to have someone that you can kind of go to ask these kinds of questions. But unfortunately, unless you kind of do that research yourself to kind of figure out the pros and cons of the different schools, the different types of programs that there are out there, no one's going to really be able to answer that for you. So you're really going to have to kind of sit down and just kind of do a comparison list of one school versus another. And different schools are going to be best suited for different people. I talk a little bit about my experience in one of my previous videos. Actually, I think my first one, where I kind of talk about a little bit of my background. So if you guys are interested in the path that I kind of took, you guys are more than welcome to go and check that video out. It's the first one. But again, keep in mind that it's obviously going to be specific to your needs, right? So like a big difference could be maybe someone is coming out right out of high school, they've had no prior education or post-secondary education. Maybe they want to go and do a full degree program, or someone like myself who had already had a prior career, who had gone to post-secondary school separate from aviation, but has still gone to college. So that might impact your choices differently. So definitely do your research would be the number one tip for you guys. I was getting like sweaty doing these. Okay, so number two tip, set up your finances. So one of the big things that definitely stops people either midway through or even from beginning their flight training is the big, scary F word, finances. And it really is something that we need to be talking about more, I think, in general. I think just within, your peers and with your friends, but I think something that really stops a lot of people from starting their flight training is the financial sacrifices or the financial burden that might come along with it. Because let's be real, it is a very expensive career to switch into. So one of the best things that you can do for yourself to A, prevent that procrastination, but B, also make you feel a little bit better about the whole process, is just get yourself educated about the different options that there are for your financial situation and get it set up. So don't get into this just kind of going about it freely without having a specific plan. Just like your flight training is probably going to be quite regimented and have some sort of structure to it, so should your finances. So getting yourself a loan, which is the reality for most pilots, that's what they had to do, or borrow the money from their parents. Getting that loan set up from a bank is definitely an option, or even having grants set up through the government from the different programs that you might be choosing. Those might be options as well. But definitely do your research and have a general idea of how much it's going to cost. Be open-minded to going to a different town or going to a different country, even to go and do your flight training based on what the costs might be or the opportunities that might be there as well. So definitely have your finances kind of set up so that you're a little bit less stressed and anxious about that, because it does stop so many of us, and it shouldn't be. Like, every single pilot will come out of their flight training with a lot of debt, and that's just the reality of getting into any profession. So that would be number two. Number three tip, find a mentor. So find someone that you already know that's in the industry, or that you've just met maybe through flight training, or a flight instructor, or whether it's a significant other, or maybe it's a family member that's already in the industry. I didn't have anybody in my family that was a pilot prior to me getting into this, but I found that as I got to meet people at the airport, and as I got to interact with more flight training students, I was able to kind of interact with a couple instructors in particular who really helped to kind of guide me and structure, my flight training. So finding a mentor can really kind of guide you through some of those like like some areas where you have a little bit less information, or just like when you're struggling too, like just having someone that can just tell you like, hey, yeah, it sucks, it's gonna be frustrating, you're gonna have your down days, but I'm here to support you. Everybody's gonna go through their ups and downs, and everybody's gonna go through their own challenges. So to make sure that it's not a competition, like we're here to help one another. So really want to make sure that that support is there for you. Number 4 is ground prep. Definitely prioritize your ground preparation. I ended up recognizing how much I actually kind of enjoyed it when I was like sitting down and like learning about like aerodynamics and flight principles. I recognized that I enjoyed it myself, but also realizing that the more that you do and the more prep and groundwork that you do prior to getting into the aircraft, the more beneficial that lesson is going to be for you. Yeah, there's a lot of portions that you're like, I just don't feel like studying today. I just don't want to be dealing with this. And then you get to the plane and you're like, yeah, I probably should have reviewed this procedure. If you don't know your stuff on the ground, it's going to show once you're flying, right? So we've all been in that boat. I've been in that situation as an instructor even later on, when you realize like a student's asking you a question and you're like, I have no idea. So your ground prep, you're reviewing, you're studying, your chair flying is a good expression that many of you guys will be familiar with. So all that stuff, doing it prior to getting into the aircraft, and whether this is working towards your private license, your commercial, whether it's working towards you becoming an instructor rating, so practicing, teaching your lessons for your students, and it's also applicable towards you getting a type rating, so practicing your procedures or your flows and your checklists prior to getting into that sim for your ride or for your lessons is really going to be important, and I still use it to this day when I'm teaching in the sim myself. You can't memorize everything. There's just no way to do it. It's more so about recognizing or realizing where to find your info that you are looking for, so that you can then have the proper information. So your ground prep is going to be really, really important for that. All right, number 5. Number 5 is don't underestimate weather. You'll hear this tons and tons of times, but it's so true. It's much better to be wishing that you were airborne than to be airborne and wishing you were on the ground. When is it safe to go? Like, can I legally go? That's one thing. Is it going to be safe to go? That's a different thing. And then is it going to be beneficial for you? Your thunderstorm seasons, icing conditions, rain on the runway, like how it affects your aircraft. So really recognizing to learn about that. And even though you may not like meteorology, you're going to be interacting with it on a daily basis once you fly. So it's really important to recognize the different impacts that it could have on yourself and on the aircraft. So number 6, know your aircraft. So this is obviously something that at the beginning might be, it might be easier, it might be kind of daunting depending like how you look at it. So at the beginning it might seem overwhelming in the sense that there's a lot of information to take on, but it's also kind of easier to know your aircraft when you're dealing with a smaller airplane versus when you eventually get to the level that you're getting a type rating. The intricacy of them all working together is just exponential in that sense. So really making sure that you try your best to study your aircraft, review your aircraft operating manual or your pilot operating handbook, your POH. So really making sure that you review that to try and absorb as much information as possible. Maybe your max crosswind landings, or you're able to know like the max payload that you could have in the back. Talking about like an airline aircraft, it's going to be an ongoing process. So you're not going to be able to know everything at the beginning. The type rating portion is to be able to operate the aircraft, and then the understanding of it and like being able to truly integrate yourself and knowing your plane is going to come as you practice actually flying it and actually being interacting with the plane itself. So that's going to be an ongoing process. So knowing your aircraft is going to be really important for you to, again, keep learning and keep improving yourself as a pilot. Okay, so number 7, kind of related to the ground preparation that I talked about, practice chair flying is number 7. Chair flying or couch flying is the expression that a lot of instructors will use when it comes to you essentially sitting down outside of the aircraft or at the aircraft itself when it's on the ground, so that you can review your flows, so where all the switches are, what the different processes are, what the different checklists are, so that when you are getting back to when you're airborne again, that you're familiar with where all the switches are and you're familiar with like the entire flow or the procedures. The more that you do that stuff on the ground, the more fluid it will be once you get airborne. I saw this being incredibly important, obviously in the beginning stages of your flight training, but even more so when you're introduced to flow. So as an example, a flow could be your after takeoff flow, where you're turning off a certain amount of switches and you're doing it, fluidly, and then going to your checklist to go through it. To be able to know that flow, you have to repeat it over and over and over again at the beginning when you haven't done it yet and you haven't practiced it. Being able to do that chair flying ahead of time, for myself, all that meant was like me putting all the posters, like the cockpit posters, on the ground and like sitting myself where I would be sitting, and then like actually physically touching all the switches. And everybody's gonna have their different way of doing this, whether it's kind of like sitting at a desk and then having the posters in front of you. That's another way of doing it. That could also mean like a stall procedure when you're first starting out for your private license, like recognizing like, okay, I'm gonna stall the aircraft, so stall, push the nose forward, add some power control with the rudder. Even going through those steps is gonna make a really big difference for you to be able to be successful in the flying of your aircraft. Okay, so number 8 is don't let technology take over. In our industry, the amount of technology and automation that is coming along is absolutely fantastic. Truly amazing, the different procedures that we can now do through automation, or to help reduce the workload from a pilot's perspective. But there is a component of that starts to kind of remove us from the equation, which can be good or bad. So really making sure that once you do, start to interact with those enhanced technologies, whatever technology that you're interacting with, making sure that it makes sense to you. So once you're putting that information in, that the information out that kind of comes back to you makes sense. Being able to go back to your basics and be able to hand fly it, or to be able to calculate simple descent rates, or time and distance calculations. Being able to do that is really going to empower you to have that confidence and know, yeah, it looks good and we should be on the right track. So making sure that you're still using this up here. So number 9 tip for your flight training: network in the industry. So really making sure that you're getting involved, whether it's in different flying groups, if you're just starting out, whether it's like a group rental for a different aircraft, or you're joining different groups that kind of fly into different airports, or you're getting in touch with different Facebook groups. It's gonna be important to see like how, not comparing yourself with how everybody else is doing, because you really want to make sure that you're choosing the best situation for yourself, because everybody's gonna have different priorities, but more so to be able to like actually try to see like what everybody else is up to and like what they're getting involved with, and whether that's like a small projects, or they're getting involved with like charity work, or even being able to volunteer at different events. Maybe down the line you may have had a mentor, but now that you can then become a mentor, you can help someone else when someone had helped you. And it's really about passing that torch along. This industry, like I said, really small, but I find that the support is quite high. So, going through your ups and downs with someone and being able to say, hey, I'm kind of struggling at this company and I'm not having a good time, or this is happening, my boss is asking me to fly when the conditions are not good for me to fly, like what do I do? Group of peers that you can network with and ask those kinds of questions is going to give you that safety and that joy as well. Networking, and maybe just be a good human. Last tip, the final tip, number 10, never stop learning. Like, we're always going to be in a situation where there's something else that we can improve on. You're going to make mistakes. I've made numerous mistakes. I still make numerous mistakes to this day. Just even my last pairing, like I miscalculated something, and it's going to happen. And it's about recognizing like you're not better than another person just because you've made it further along in your flight training. So I'm no better than someone who has just begun their first lesson because I know more stuff. It's just that I'm further along in my career. So recognizing that I still have so much to learn. I am such a baby in respect to some of the guys who have been flying for 10, 15 years, who have been flying huge aircraft. They've been flying all around the world, and it's intimidating sometimes, like recognizing like you have to have confidence and know that you've been trained and you've got skills, but you also have to be humble enough to recognize like, hey, call me out when I'm doing something wrong, or like teach me something. And you being able to go to that captain or go to that first officer or go to your chief pilot and say, hey, I'm struggling with this, can you help me, is a huge, it's a very important skill. And I think it just improves you as a person and improves you as a pilot. You know, always trying to learn and improve is really going to be beneficial for your career. It's a good last topic to make sure that you guys keep reminding yourselves that just because you guys are just starting out or just because it's been 10 years doesn't mean that we're better than other people. Like, we're all in this as a community. Yeah, let's just keep learning and just like keep helping each other. So yeah, I hope that you guys liked my top 10 tips for flight training. I hope you guys enjoyed it. I hope that it helped you guys in some way. I will do my best to try and upload more regularly, and if this is something that you guys like, then we can kind of start a vlogging series as well, where we can do like Q&As, we can do certain topics that you guys are interested in. Thank you so much, guys. I hope everybody has an awesome day, and rock on.
Thank you so much for watching, you guys. Make sure to subscribe to my channel so you guys see some more goodies. Let me know what you guys think in the comments below, and make sure to give this video a nice thumbs up.